Hey everybody, welcome to another live stream. This is that really awkward beginning part where I'm still kind of setting up the camera and stuff. Somebody actually commented on that before, that their favorite part was the awkward part at the beginning. I just posted this week's video. A lot of you have probably already seen it already. If you haven't, it was the wraparound corner picture frames and the wrap inside corner picture frames. It was a super challenging project. I think I discussed it last live show about building it and how I was trying to figure out how to bend the plastic and everything. A few questions that came in on YouTube. I wanted to address these really quick. Then I'm going to get to the tool maintenance tips. We got a lot of tool maintenance tips I'm going to try to observe, or at least try to see if they work out on my tools, or see if I even do those tool maintenance tips. First of all, a lot of people are asking me about the hanging method I used on those picture frames, and I thought I mentioned it in the video, but maybe I didn't. I just used Velcro, and this is the you can get this kind. Well, of course, it's got the two sides, but it's got an adhesive on each side. And so that adhesive sticks really well to the wall, and it sticks to the picture frame. So I think it's like the easiest, best way to hang weird picture frames, because otherwise I can't think of how, I would have to put hangers on there and then try to get the two sides level, and it just would be really difficult. So I used the Velcro, and actually I think you could probably use Velcro to hang just about anything in the house. It's really strong. So sorry I didn't mention that in the video. I forgot. Had a couple other things. Sorry I'm out of the frame right now. I've got a lot of different things here. On Patreon, somebody mentioned that it might be a good idea to, since corners of walls are never perfectly straight, that where I have the bevels meeting up is to just put some sort of a hinge on there. And I was kind of thinking just the wooden hinge, kind of like the splines are, and it wouldn't even have to be much of a hinge, just a little. That way it would fit the corners of your walls better. But as it turned out, it doesn't really matter because the Velcro is pretty giving, and so it just kind of squishes in place. But that's not a bad idea to make a hinged version of that. Let's see, a couple of people, Mark Stewart was the first one to mention this, and this is like one of those brilliant things that I just never thought of, and it was so stupid I didn't, is that they both suggested, Mark and I think maybe a couple other people suggested, that the easier way to make those frames would be to make a complete frame, two of them, glue them up, because then you'd be able to clamp it with a, strap clamp around them, and then cut the bevels out. So you're just cutting off that one side, and then you can make the bevels. And I wish I had thought of that to begin with, and I wouldn't be doing that wonky glue up, and it would have been a lot easier. So if you want to torture yourself by making those frames, lessen the torture by doing it that way. Make two frames, then cut the sides off of the two of them. And finally, lots of questions about how I cut the plexiglass. The acrylic plastic, I guess, acrylic is what you should call it. Plexiglass is the brand name, but everybody calls it plexiglass. I get that every time I cut plexiglass. People ask me what kind of special saw blade or something. No, I just use my regular multi-purpose saw blade, and it cuts just fine. The only thing to be careful of with plexi is that if you cut it too slowly, and I've noticed this more on the bandsaw than on the table saw, if you cut it too slowly, it can kind of melt the plastic, the edges, and it gets like a burr that runs along the edge that you can either, sand off a little bit or smooth out. But yeah, cutting plexiglass is just no different than cutting wood, really, except that another thing is the shavings of it are just filled with static electricity, and it kind of gets all over you. That part is kind of a pain. Anyway, so those are the first, I think those are going to be the main questions that pop up on that. Now I want to get to the topic of this week's live stream, which is tool maintenance tips. And I asked those of you over on Patreon, if you have any good tool maintenance tips, I got a few. I'll go over those first. And I think because a lot of you are probably like me, you don't maintain your tools probably as well as we should. I tend to just use my tools and then I finish my project and I get on and I leave them and I don't spend the time. So hopefully I can change some of that today. Let me go through a couple of suggestions from Patreon. First one was from David Plants from Rowdy Penguin. Known David for a while. He lives out in Sacramento, I believe. I liked his suggestion was, I leave them out for the gremlins to come clean them. They're not as reliable as one would hope, though. So that's sort of, I think, my tool maintenance tip too. I just kind of let it go, which I shouldn't. Anyways, let's get on to Jeffrey Alelby. Says benchtop planer maintenance. I've had a Delta 22580 planer that I bought over 15 years ago. When I received it, I angled both the Infeed and Outfeed tables 2 degrees up per the comments on Amazon and had a beautiful snipe-free cuts for years. A while back I noticed that it just wasn't cutting well. So upon inspection I realized that both the Infeed and Outfeed rollers were dirty and glazed. Not sure what that is. I think they've lost their stickiness maybe. I raised the head all the way up, used hot soapy water and a Scotch-Brite pad, and just scrubbed them clean. Insert disclaimer here. Until they were again grippy. I have to do this quite often now, but this method works for me. That's a really great tip. And I've got my planer out and I want to show you guys what he's talking about. We're gonna go mobile here in just a few seconds, okay, with some of these tips. But I want to read through some of them first. So we'll come back to Jeffrey's tip here in just a second. Rattle Can Guitar Restorations says a stick of chalk in each drawer to help keep humidity levels down. I've never heard of that. That's a pretty good idea. I certainly have chalk. I've got a lot of drawers for screws and things, so I don't think I'd want to put chalk in each one of those, but maybe in the drawers where I keep some tools, not a bad idea. We don't get a lot of humidity where I live. In the wintertime, it might be a great idea. And let's see, those were some of your Patreon tips. Let me go over to Twitter and let's see what we got there. First comment for tool maintenance tips was from Liz, who says, "What's tool maintenance?" Yeah, it's kind of my thought too. And then Dave responded to her, tool maintenance is using tools to build more storage because you bought more tools. It's an endless cycle there. Okay, this is from Warren. Warren says, better to sharpen chisels, and Warren Downs. You probably know Warren Downs from One Wood Tools down in Australia. Long-time viewer of woodworking for mere mortals and really great guy. Better to sharpen chisels and blades before they get blunt. A quick 30-second touch-up can keep them razor sharp. That's a good tip, and I got something to show you with that too. He also says WD-40 is as good as any product I have tried for slowing rust. Is there anything WD-40 can't do? I normally cover any tools in it that I don't often use, like a scroll saw. So maybe I should do that, because I don't use my scroll saw that often. And just spray some WD-40 on there and see how it lasts. This is from MM Woods. This is Muncher, good friend of the show. He has just a bit of advice about tools, and I like this. He says, share your tools. Use them to build relationships and not just projects. I like that because I think it goes contrary to what everybody likes to say, that don't ever lend your tools to people. You'll never get them back. And I think it's better just to, if somebody asks for a tool, a neighbor, let them borrow it. Build those relationships. And if you don't get your tool back right away, go over and get it. Let's see. Here's a good tip from Yinon Sofer. When it comes to designated screws or extra parts for power tools, I like to wrap it with masking tape to the tool. That way I never lose it and I'll never forget what it's used for. Yeah, that's another thing I'd like to add to that is magnets too. I've seen a lot of people use magnets for, like, for me it's the wrench for taking my saw blade off of the table saw. That wrench is just always everywhere, and I keep telling myself I'm going to put a magnet on that so I can stick it to the saw, but I just have never got around to doing that. But taping things to your tools is a good idea too. Matthew says when he's done with a job, he cleans and puts back his tools in the proper spot. He uses the right tools for the right job. Well, I think we all kind of aspire to that, don't we? We always say we're going to put things away. In general, I put tools away a little bit while I'm working on a project to keep it kind of clean, and I probably do it more while I'm working on the project rather than after the project. And then maybe on a weekend, I'll go through a cleaning spree and try to straighten everything up in the shop. Piers suggests if you strop, I don't know if you know what a strop is. It's like what, you used to see the barber shops going with their razor blade. It's just a leather strip is a strop. If you strop as you feel your chisels start to lose their edge, then you almost never need to sharpen them. Saves loads of time and effort. That's a really good tip too, and I've heard a couple of other people suggest that, and again, I'll show you a sharpener that I use for a lot of tools here in just a second. One that I recommend, and it's inexpensive. Protecting chisel edges, wax your table saw and sleds. Never use silicone-based oils near wood because it will stop paint and varnish from penetrating. True. So that's another thing I want to try out today is putting paste wax on my table saw. JCV says, force yourself in the habit of always putting your pencil behind your ear or in your shirt pocket. I never have a shirt pocket. And your tape measure on your belt. That's not a bad, I agree with probably the pencil is the most annoying thing for me, that I'm always misplacing the pencil, but tape measure I don't really carry around that much. And he also suggests that the black film canisters are good for Phillips and flathead screws. He uses the gray for hex star or square bit, so he's very organized. It's probably getting more and more difficult to find those little black film canisters. I guess if you were smart, we would have all saved some of those back from when 35mm film. I used to have lots of those. He also suggests that you spray paint your tools or handles all the same obnoxious colors so they don't grow legs as easily. That's kind of the, Jimmy Duresta does it. He spray paints all of his tools white. I don't know why he does that, but he does that. It seems like just a lot of extra work to me, so I don't know. I'm not sure. Greg says his maintenance program is to buy a new tool once his old one is in bad enough shape. Well, I guess if it lasts you long enough, then you've got your money's worth out of it. Otherwise, that's kind of an expensive way to maintain tools. Wood Shop Garage says to store batteries in the winter for those of us who have garage or unheated shops. I think he means storing the batteries in the house. Yeah, I think in the cold weather it probably affects those. Alan D says keep a cheap humidity sensor in the shop. Run a dehumidifier to help combat surface rust. Silica packets in toolbox drawers do similar. Oh, that's a good idea. Silica, those little silica do not eat packages that come in electronics and things. I always throw those out. Maybe I should save those. That's a great idea. I would just put those in all of the drawers. Running a dehumidifier, again, where I live, it's never really too humid, but that's certainly not a bad idea. I wonder if that would help I don't know if a dehumidifier would have much effect on keeping the wood dry or not. Maybe. Pricey says, don't let your neighbors borrow your contractor saw and have them forget it in the garden just before a storm. Oh, that's oddly specific. Something tells me you've had some experience with that. John says, buy cheap-ass tools and leave them out on your bench. Put the good ones away, out of sight. Yeah, that's the way to keep your tools in top condition, is put them away and don't use them. Surprisingly, I think there's a lot more people than you think that actually do that. Let's see. Jack Evans. Hey, Jack. He says he hangs an oiled rag near his tool wall and gives everything a quick wipe as he puts it away. Good idea. Okay, so those are some of the tips. Now we're going to go mobile. I'm going to take you off here, and I want to show you some of the things I use, and then I'm going to show you what Jeffrey was talking about with the planer. So let me flip this around. Joink. There we go. Hey, you can see my garage door from here. Okay. Unhook. Okay. So this is, wow, that is dark. Let me come around this way. There we go. This is my planer, and I don't use it that often. I probably used to use it a lot more. Lately, I've been using just more dimensional lumber and resawing it down to thinner pieces if I need it. But anyways, what Jason was talking about, these infeed and outfeed tables, is that you want those to be, of course, flat, so that when you send the board in this way, it comes out this way flat. But what he's saying is to take these and move them up about 2 degrees, both the infeed and the outfeed side. I'm kind of exaggerating that there. I've had people tell me that before, and maybe if I try that, I'll have better luck with it, because the problem with planing is often snipe. And snipe is where, when you run a board through the planer, the last inch or so of it just cuts down a little bit too deep. And I think it's because the board, I don't know, bounces down a little bit from the rollers pushing it. So I always ended up having to account for that when I planed boards, just to make them extra long, and then I would just cut off that last 2 inches, which is really a waste. And I think this sounds like a better idea. The other suggestion he had was for maintaining the rollers. Let's see if I can raise this. Oops, going the wrong way. So this is just raising these cutter heads up. So under here, I don't know if you can see that. Let me see if I can see it from this side. And yeah, I can't really see it from here. There's these rubber rollers under there, and that's what grabs the board and pulls it through. So it's like automatic. You don't push boards through a planer. And I've had that same problem that he was describing, where they just spin. They don't grab as much. And I guess it's like anything else, it kind of loses its hold. So he suggests just use soapy, I think he said just soapy water, and we'll wash them off that way. Okay, I'm back up here again. And, okay, let me get my hands. Hot soapy water and a Scotch-Brite pad. So that's the way to clean those rubber rollers, make sure that they grip again. So I'm going to do a little bit more maintenance on I have with the planer is that the blades will get nicked. And so you get that one line that runs down the board. And I've kind of figured out, you know, you run it through different parts of the planer seems to help, but in general, I think maintaining a planer is kind of a pain. Okay, I want to show you my sharpening thing that I use here. Let me lower this down. I'm going to try to do this so I can keep my hands free. Over this way. Okay, this is a thing I got, and I just love this little tool. I don't know if any of you have ever seen this before. It's called, shoot, what's it called? I actually have the name of it someplace. I put it in the description of this video. It's Work Sharp. There it is, right there. Sorry, guys. This is called a Work Sharp. And I got this at I think it was like at a trade show or something. It was like a giveaway, and I didn't think much of it. I use this thing all the time for sharpening tools. I keep it in the kitchen because I use it to sharpen knives all the time. So what this is it's got two sharpening stones. It's got kind of a rough edge here and an even smoother one here. These things come out, they're magnetic. I'm not really sure why you need that, but then it just drops back in there, and this one comes out too. And it's got, I guess it's got a little storage area down there. I guess you could keep things in there if you wanted to. So it's got those two sharpening areas. So usually, like in the kitchen, I just use this smooth one. It's super smooth. It's just almost just like a flat piece of metal. And then, let's see, on these sides, it's got these angles on here. So you've got a 20 degree and, oh, those are both 20 degree. Oh, I see. So that's why, maybe that's why you can flip those around. Hold on a second. 20 degree guide, 20 degree. Oh, they're all 20 degree guides. Okay. So these are 20 degree guides. So what you would do is take your knife or chisel, and if I grab a chisel, I could show you. Don't laugh, this is my burner chisel. This is the one I use for opening paint cans and things. So you would put the chisel on here like this, and it gives you kind of the angle that you need for that chisel to be, and then you can sharpen it that way. I use it in the kitchen and just sharpen knives this way. But that's not all that this is capable of. Over here, this is the leather strop, and this is what somebody had mentioned. I think Warren mentioned, maybe it was Warren, maybe it was somebody else, mentioned that if you just keep sharpening your tools on that leather strop, you really don't have to resharpen them. You're just keeping them honed. And a leather strop is not really for sharpening, but for honing. And the difference there is that I guess the whole process of getting a tool sharp begins with, well, at the basic rough level, you would grind it. You could use like a grinding wheel or something to kind of give it a shape. And then you go on to the sharpening, kind of like sandpaper, where you just go to finer and finer grits. But then to hone it, honing is just giving it kind of that razor sharp edge. And that's exactly what the strop is for. So every time, after you see like chefs doing this, they're constantly sharpening the knife, because every time you use it, you're kind of dulling that honed edge. It's still sharp, but you're dulling the hone on it. So that's good. This also has this ceramic sharpener here that has 3 different settings on it. It's got this wheel, and it turns around like that. I don't use all of those. It says on here what those are for. Let's see. So, like, let's see. It's got little instructions here. It says the 3-step ceramic rod is for, it's got a coarse grit, fine grit, and a fish hook sharpener. I don't know. I guess people sharpen fish hooks. It seems to me those are probably cheap that you would just buy a new one. But if you needed to sharpen a fish hook, you could. Anyways, that's my go-to. It's even got a little sharpener thingy right here. I'm not really sure what that one's for. This little tool is my go-to sharpener. I use it for just about everything. It's probably not as you know, perfect as you would get with a more elaborate system, but I think it's like $25 or something. I think it's worth it. Let's see. Next, let's try out the WD-40. Yeah, take the camera off of here. Well, maybe I can switch it around. Okay, walk with me in the tripod. It's just like being in my shop, isn't it? All right, here's my bandsaw. You see the bandsaw all right? Okay. All right, let me get the WD-40. Let's see how this works. So I'm going to show you my two-step system because my tools, I'm too tall for this kind of thing. I'm always way above. I'm constantly having to adjust. Okay, I'll squat down here a little bit. So I've got a two-step way of dealing with rust and conditioning my tabletop. And even though my bandsaw tabletop looks rusted all the time, it's usually not that bad. But I just sand it to begin with. And you'll see, just by sanding, that it's just already removing most of the rust that way. And you could use a sanding block, you know, it would keep it flatter. On a bandsaw, I'm not really that concerned that I don't think you can sand it out of true using your hand sander, really. I think just sanding it is fine, like this. So I'll keep this a little shorter. Let me grab this. And we're gonna flip around again. Okay, on this side. So you can see some of the rust that's on here. It comes off pretty easily. I've even used my random orbit sander before. Okay, well this gives you a basic idea. The nice thing about sanding is that, and you can see how that just really takes the rust off. I'm using a fine sandpaper. It's like a 220 grit. And the nice thing about sanding it is that you can feel instantly that it's slick, so that when you run a board across there, it runs really smoothly. So anyways, the other suggestion was to use WD-40. And I haven't used WD-40 on my tools before, so I'm going to try it right now. See if I can clamp this on here. And there we go. Okay. Yeah, the interesting thing about that WD-40 is how it seems to almost soak into the wood. So let me just rub that on there. And I don't know if it's just me, but I really like the smell of WD-40. It smells like a machine shop or something when you apply it. So let that sit for a while, and I'll come back to that. Okay. Looks good. Okay. Next thing I want to do is I want to head over to my table saw and show you what I'm doing on that. Let me put the camera up here and flip it around again. Okay, here we are. All right, I'm going to bring the table saw over this way. Take my miter gauge off. Okay. I want to show you what I've been normally using. I might switch to WD-40 if that works out pretty well, and if it turns out that that's a lot easier. Move this up. So again, not a whole lot of rust on here. Some. I'll take the major pieces off. And you know, to be honest, I don't think rust, surface rust, is that big of a problem. I think the biggest problem with the surface rust is that it can transfer onto the wood. It's like a cosmetic problem, and then you just have to clean the lumber off, clean it, or just sand it. You'll probably be sanding anyway. So the other problem with rust is that it can cause it just not to be as smooth and slick. I think if it, like an advanced case of rust would be a problem, but I think the surface rust isn't really that big of a problem. But it makes the tools look nicer too if you clean it off. I'm going to lower this blade down so I don't cut my fingers. So I can already feel that it's a lot smoother. So this is the stuff that I normally use, and let's see if you can see that if it's not too bright. This is called Bostick Topcoat, and it's expensive. I looked online, and I think this might have been 20 bucks for a can, 25 bucks. I got mine for $11.99 at Woodcraft, but I've had this for like 6 years. It's almost empty. This may be its last use, so it lasts a long time. But what this does is it cleans the cast iron and aluminum tabletops, but it also conditions them, and it protects them, and it makes them nice and slick. I think it's a silicone based thing. But anyways, to use this stuff, just spray it on. Yeah, almost out. Let me take the camera off here. Okay, now we're gonna flippy doodle. Okay, so this stuff, you actually can let it just soak in for a while. I'm not sure exactly how long they recommend. It's I just kind of use it. It just says allow a few seconds for it to penetrate, but I've let it sit on there for an hour or so just to, I don't know, let it soak in. But you can buff it, just kind of like you're smoothing out a lacquer finish or something, and it just works right into it. Again, normally I would probably spend more time sanding it to get rid of some of these more rusted spots. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so that, lots of buffing. And you can just feel it just get nice and smooth. Then, let me just use this as a test. This is my miter gauge. Sometimes that stuff, that top coat stuff, is almost too slick. It's like, oh, I need a little bit of friction there, but you can see how that just makes everything slide so nice. It's just like butter. So I'll take that out. The other thing I wanted to try out was the paste wax. So let's give that a shot. I'm gonna put the camera back up here. This is like the jostlingest, jumpiest video, isn't it? It's like my old videos from way back when. All right, this is my paste finishing wax. I can use my burner chisel to open the can. How do you make a woodworker cringe? Use a chisel to open a can. So, I use paste wax, by the way, on a lot of my projects after I lacquer projects and the lacquer's dried for a day or so. Put some paste finishing wax on it, let it sit for a while, and then you just buff it down, and it gives it that just super nice, smooth feel. But I don't know how well this is gonna work now that I've put that top coat stuff on, but I'll give it a shot. And I think the last time I put wax on this was when I think the last time I made a table saw sled, maybe, so it would slide easier. Yeah, it seems to work pretty well on here. I'm not putting it on the aluminum parts, by the way. These two wings are aluminum. Those two things make the table look a lot bigger, or the saw look a lot bigger than it really is, but really the saw is just this section right here. Alright, so with that on there, I think usually with paste wax I like to let it sit for 15 or 20 minutes, but I think I can buff it down right now. I wonder if you could see all that. You can probably hear all that things falling out of my cabinet over there. Let's buff this down. You know, I gotta tell you, there's something very satisfying about maintaining tools once they're already cleaned up and working real nice. It's just a matter of bringing myself to actually get to that point where I do this kind of work. Okay. Woo, that is slick. All right. You want to see how slick that is now? Watch this. Let me grab something. See how well it slides. That's a slick tabletop right there. So yeah, have a really sharp blade in there and just. Oh, you don't want to do that. Okay, so those are our ways to maintain the top surfaces of your saws. Thank you guys for your suggestions over on Patreon and on Twitter. Let's see if anything else that I needed to mention came up. Let me get a drink of water. Hold on. Okay, I think that was all I had to mention. It is. Okay. Well, there's some tool maintenance tips. I hope you guys got some use out of that. If you guys, anybody have any other tips? Let me look through some of the comments. I know a lot of you have been leaving comments, and I want to thank Wyatt. Wyatt's just up in my office, been moderating comments today, and I don't know what I'm going to do when he goes back to school next fall. But okay. Let me go through some of the recent comments. I'm sorry, all of you who left comments at the beginning. I'm just going to start kind of somewhere in the middle here. How about that? Sort of fair. Can you this is from Matthew, can you put wax or something on the table saw to prevent it from rusting in the first place? Yeah, I think that's probably the main point of putting wax on, or any of those finished top coats on the table saw, is to prevent it from, to slow down rusting, I guess. I don't think anything's really going to prevent it, but, and again, in most of the year, I don't have a problem, at least here in California, where it doesn't rain, except in the winter time where we do get a lot of rain, and it doesn't help that I keep my saw right where my garage door is, and so if we get some really crazy rain, it gets on there, and that's more of a problem than humidity itself. Cheapo asks, can't you just use some simple spray lacquer? I don't know if I've caught that part, that comment is relating to another one, or if it's relating to spraying it on tools. I don't think you would want to use spray lacquer. I think it would just chip off. I don't even know if it would stick that well to cast iron. And by the way, a lot of the lower end table saws have aluminum tops rather than cast iron, which is why they're less expensive, because cast iron is more expensive. The reason why cast iron is preferred is because it's flatter. But I don't think on a small table saw it makes that much of a difference. I think it's more for bigger table saws. You might notice a problem with it. So I wouldn't shy away from buying an aluminum top table saw. You can actually get table saws that have like granite tops to them. I guess they're supposed to be perfectly flat and straight. I don't know. That's a lot more money than I've got to spend on a table saw. Chris Jones says he uses WD-40 with the tool and then an emery cloth. There's a good idea. Ken Horton says he uses steel wool and mineral spirits to clean the top of his table saw, and then he puts paste wax on top. That sounds like a good solution. I think there's a lot of ways to do it. I think we just got to be diligent about it. I think, well, and by we I mean me. I have to be more diligent about maintaining my tools and sharpening. Where's Bill Deal says, where's Wyatt? Have him be your cameraman. Yeah, he's actually doing the moderation because of the comments, because that was a huge problem. We were getting so much spam and just junk on there. So he has to watch all of those. So actually I would need like a third person. But using this YouTube has two different ways of live streaming. There's like the big full-blown production kind, where you can use a real camera and stuff, or you can use this mobile live, which is what I'm using, which is just on my phone, which it's kind of like Periscope, only on YouTube, so it kind of makes more sense. And I find it works out great. And I don't know, someday I may get to a more elaborate setup where I could have titles and that sort of thing, but I would definitely need more help with that. Here's Peter says that he watched an episode of Norm Abram and said that he restored an old rusty table saw top and applied car wax on it. There you go. I'm getting the impression that kind of anything will work on tool tops. Wow, this hour has been going by very quickly. Take a couple more comments and I gotta run. You know what I'm doing today? We're going to the fair, Marin County Fair. It opens today. And I've got some projects. Some of my projects are entered there, so I'm curious to see how I did. Follow me over on Instagram, because I'll probably post pictures of them if I did well. I entered they always have this chair competition there for either building chairs or decorating chairs. It's just a thing. I don't know why this is, but it's huge. So this year I entered those two little animal chairs, kids animal chairs, into the fair. So I'm curious to see how those did. And I also entered 2 lamps into the fair. One was for woodworking and the other one was for like miscellaneous. I did the one that was like my steampunk lamp with all of the plumbing parts, and then the other lamp was my bent wood lamp. It was oak with the concrete base. I thought that was like the coolest project. I loved it. I don't know, a lot of people didn't care that much for that project on YouTube, but I thought it was really good. So I'm curious to see how those do. And I entered my 2 wooden spoons, the guitar shaped spoon. So I got a lot of stuff in the fair this year. I'm really curious to see how I did. Hey, Peter. Peter said he made the paper roll dispenser at the end of my workbench, and he said it works awesome. Yeah, I really love that roll dispenser, and I like the fact that there's no. Well, here, let me just show it to you. In case you haven't seen that video, it was probably a year or so ago. So I keep shop towels, paper towels here. I really like having those. These fit onto this dowel. This is craft paper, and it's good for just like putting down on top of my workbench if I'm staining something, or I don't know. I also use it for just packaging things, just crumple it up and put it in packages. But down here is this big roll of, this is just a piece of it right here. This big roll of, I don't think that's really called craft paper. I don't know, it's thick. I forget what this stuff is called. But what I like about this design is that there's no tube. There's nothing to put through that roll. It just drops down into that trough, and you can pull it out this way. And then that will completely cover my workbench. I remember when I posted the video, a lot of people thought that the design was bad because these two were on top, and that if I had this rolled out over my workbench, that I wouldn't be able to get to those. But it's just one of those things that's kind of a non-issue, because I don't need both at the same time. So it was fine. And actually turned out that this bar here is really nice for, let me get this cord out of the way. That bar, find the end, find an end, is that bar actually is really nice for just tearing pieces off. Like that. I didn't do a very good job there. Anyway, that's how that works out. So I'm glad you made that project, though. That's cool. Okay, I am back here. I think I'm gonna have to end it there. I've got a lot of stuff to do today. Let me see if there's one more question I can get in. Okay, here's from Johan van Dijk. He uses a 50-50 mix of motor oil and thinners for table saw rust prevention. Well, there you go. I think there's just a lot of different ways. As long as you've got some sort of oil or wax on top of it, I think you're good to go. That's all I got for this week, guys. Thank you for joining me on this week's live stream. I like doing these where there's kind of a topic, and I like ones that let me kind of move around the shop a little bit. If you have any suggestions for future live stream topics, things that can be more visual like that, leave a comment. Don't leave it in the chat, because the chat disappears. So when this video, the video will go live on the, or it will be published on the actual channel for forever in just a few minutes as soon as I'm done with it. Leave a comment there so I can get an idea of what you guys would like to see on future live shows. And that's all for now. Thank you guys. I'll see you later.